Ladies and gentlemen, Francisco Ricardo with you, and tonight we bring you a tale with many turns. It's a moral about art and impulse and the future. We hope you enjoy it. Now, in this small village, not far from the sandy shores of the Mediterranean, many artists, most of world fame, would steal away a while, typically but a summer, to draw inspiration and strength, and in some cases to prepare for the next important phase of their careers. In this incubator of art history, it was that one summer night, two of the world's most renowned contemporary artists met quite by accident in the same few square feet. Now, with pride big enough to match their talents, these two world leaders in personality and ego began to first engage each other in what can only be called vacuous small talk. Klaus, the first artist, went to Marco, the name of our second friend here, and just greeted him. "Hello, Marco." "Ah, hello, Klaus. How goes it?" "Very well, and you?" "Bonny, very bonny." Well, soon they were sizing each other up, as two competitors inevitably must. Klaus comes at him with, "Any new commissions lately, Marco?" And Marco, "No, not since the mural for the Prince of Monaco." Klaus, "Oh, nothing? Nothing since? Really?" Marco, "Oh yes, I admit things might be slowing down a little bit. I only got it last Tuesday." "And surely you're already finished? Why waste time?" "Well, why waste time indeed, when you're already wasting paint?" "I am economical," said Marco. "I know what I want to paint. Some people I know search in vain and get nothing, while others search for nothing in vain. Still, I must admit that what you have in speed of execution is shown by superficial obviousness in the work." "Well, I have to rush through work. I get so much of it." Klaus coming back again. "Even if you get more of it than the viewer gets out of it?" "Thank you for the rough humor," said Marco. "And how are you doing? Still producing wrinkle cream? So I'm afraid you've lost me." "Well, that's never hard to do. I mean, by that particular comment, that collectors of your art have seemed to age considerably since the bottom fell out of your market." "Oh, if only it were my market. Can I help if I drive so much of it?" "Well, if prices keep dropping, my friend Klaus, the Uber artist, the only thing you'll be driving is Uber itself." Well, as you can see, they wasted no time in getting reacquainted. And so we've had to skip the part about where they briefly did talk a little shop, but have no fear, we'll come back to that one later. And while it would have sufficed to just have enough of a passing chat to prove to themselves, to each other, and to us that their mutual disdain was real, it proved equally impossible for such a chat to just be a passing one. So rancorous was the animus, so competitive the spirit between these two characters, that their meeting was far from fleeting. Rather, and I'm afraid to say for all the wrong reasons, these two pretentious megalomaniacs, accustomed to the total glowing and unquestioning admiration of the art world, but nevertheless unable to get it from each other, gave in, together and individually, to the challenge of trying their level best and to level each other. To a pulp! Through whatever artistic means were possible. Now then, it wasn't long until the challenge came up. Being formal artists, they instantly agreed on one thing. Any duel would itself have to be framed in formal terms. And for anyone drawn to the allure of the wager, what could be more formal than a simple bet? The only questions were, what are we betting for? And what with? Well, with egos like that, the second part was easy. The stakes, no more, no less, were to be the highest possible. The winner, they agreed, would carry away the entire collection of the loser, who would be found guilty either of a serious crime or, if not, somehow relegated to oblivion. And now then, the only question would be about who any intended victim might be, if someone were to get in the way. A list was drawn up and included all the usual targets, every one of whom was a famous art critic or another, who they usually and mutually felt brought no joy to the art world. Wordy and pompous insufferability, throwing up, almost literally, all manner of strange new words. For ugly, for pretty ugly. That is to say, you see the entire range in 3 points of their art appreciation sentiments. Our two outrageous egos could never doubt themselves and wouldn't put up with anyone else who might. Well, a simple handshake was enough to turn the deal into a deed, and now the plots could start to be laid. No one felt the least suspicion, for there was no outward evidence, not at first anyway, of anything amiss. But to be sure, if you looked for clues, as many did much later, signs of trouble had already begun to appear. The first, apparently, to start things off with a bang, happened when, sitting in a beachfront cafe one morning, one of our two contestants for greatest art schemer of all time picked up the newspaper and read, to his utter surprise, that the other had given a speech at a local gallery the previous evening, and declared, or complained more like it, that the problem with art today is that artists are too far removed from real suffering and real experience, creating away in their sunny studios, putting paint to petty portraits, and while risking little, sacrificing nothing, they have been pretending to tell us something real all along about art and about life. And then, in the next passage of the same article, it described how the artist had just, with one phone call to his own studio assistant back home, given him the clearest and strictest instruction to set every shred of property owned by the artist, including the studio itself and every work of art within it, powerfully ablaze. He had made a small plaque, to be sure, that could be placed at a safe distance from the bonfire. And this plaque confirmed that the Inferno was in fact a piece of performance art. Though its title made little sense to everyone except his arch nemesis in reference to their own private bet, because the Inferno, which burned for 2 days and 3 nights, was tersely titled, Beat This. And so it was back at the cafe we found our other artist, if you'll forgive the phrase, rather incensed. And no less by the work's title, which, as it were, was clearly making light of the situation. And the conditions scarcely improved when, perhaps by a most cosmic turn of sad irony, our artist's own sandwich was just delivered, badly burned. Well, now that the seemingly first salvo had been fired, again pardoning the expression, a response had to come. But what to do? I mean, it's hard to beat an artist who has beaten himself, even if he hadn't really done so. For unbeknownst to anyone, the blazing work had actually been sold by prior arrangement to a private collector, who wanted, as he himself had said, both everything and nothing that the artist could ever produce. And as if to add an additional bit of insurance from the netherworld, the artist had also, at the advice of his guru, brought a shaman into the place in order to eliminate all bad luck and evil spirits through a cleansing ceremony carried out moments before the fire began, by means of a total sweep of the premises using the smoky power of a clump of sage. That day for sure fortune seemed to change, for the advice proved to be as sage as the ritual, after which it seemed very few people could discuss anything in the topic of art without referring to that blazing bordello, which had made, by its own sacrifice, a greater than ever name for an artist whose return every critic now awaited with anticipation, in the false belief that the artist had destroyed his house and his studio as part of some phoenix myth, and all that was needed to prove them and their own egos right was for him and his work to rise again from the literal and proverbial ashes. How could anyone top that? You would be right to ask. And if this is all we knew of the story, it too would be what our artists would still be thinking. But it isn't. And it wasn't. Because before even starting on his own sandwich, our artist and cafe patron was seen by witnesses to demonstrate a most unusual and extreme change of mood when he was approached by his waiter, who handed him the cafe telephone. And what he must have been hearing can only be imagined as the best news ever, because he left immediately, and as he did so, made the waiter equally happy with a table tip of €100 or whatever the local currency was at that time. What happened in that phone call? Now, to clarify, let's recap how all this went. The two world leaders in ego and art, seeking to establish which of them was the greatest artist, placed a bet designed not only to prove that challenge with the greatest work of art ever, but to do so in a way that could actually frame the other artist for either some kind of crime or some kind of oblivion, thereby freeing one from competition and locking away the other in a single move. That cafe phone call that followed that bogus bit of pyrotechnical performance could only have made our seeming loser in the wager as happy as it did if it could turn the tables and top the fireball. And it did just that. The collector, you see, who was to buy that work, when up in smoke, had himself just expired. And the purchase just made was part of his estate, which in his will, unbelievably enough, he was to leave to someone I almost dare not tell you. But I think you can guess who that is. How is this arrangement possible, you ask? Simple. Almost too simple. The artist, who now stood to benefit, had made the collector wealthy by an extraordinarily simple agreement, and it went something like this. On a visit to the collector, the artist said, "I want to thank you for your support. I am obscure now, but one day that will change." And the collector, knowing it all almost seemingly in advance, said, "My dear boy, I've banked on so many artists that what you just told me could be my epitaph. I've made artists as much as they've made me, but rarely have I seen so golden a touch of potential as is evident in your work. Never have I seen the work of an unknown artist as you are now rise in price like this. Insiders know of your gifts, and that's been enough to change my life among them." And the artist, touched, said, "I've never had a patron before." And the collector replied, "Well, you won't need another. Not if I'm right." "I'm flattered tremendously," said the artist. "I do feel my work could be great one day." "Oh, my boy, but it is already great. What it really needs is recognition, and to build that requires great amounts of money, even more than I can muster if I continue to buy your work." "You've been indeed the most supportive collector," said the artist. "And I will continue to be. Why, I was just thinking this morning," said the collector. "I was realizing something here. We could help each other." "I'm all ears," said the artist. Then the collector hatched the plan. "And you see me here, old, bent, frail. No amount of money will extend this life that I've already lived to its fullest. You, on the other hand, are a bud in early blossom, and the future, as much as it is not mine, is really yours." "When you speak like this," says the artist, "I must admit, you sound as much like an artist as I do." "It heartens me to hear you say that, because I have one final idea, one last and greatest of all commissions, for which I will reward you more greatly than you can now foresee. See, you have always been great yourself, in your ideas and in your generosity, in everything. Ah, yes, my son, for even my own fortune cannot embrace the scope of what I truly want." The artist, "Well, I listen intently, totally." "My boy, you're so prolific that there's no sense pretending that I'll ever be able to afford your entire oeuvre. Not now, and even less later. I would mortgage everything I own to see how well you do in years to come. And if I'd seem desperate in my hope, it's not desperation I have, but rather confidence in your skill. Greater and surer is your hand than a modern-day Rembrandt's. Let us agree to this. If you're amenable, henceforth I will be the primary owner and first bidder of all your works. Every piece, made and unmade, real and possible, is to belong to me." The artist, shocked, didn't know what to say. Stumbling for words, just said, I can think of no one who I would prefer to have my works, but as you yourself have mentioned, how can we price what does not yet exist? And whose value, if you're right, will increase even beyond what you can afford." "So yes, indeed," says the collector. "How?" "Let me explain. You, my friend, will retain a pension, a monthly amount, generous enough for you to live on most comfortably. But when I pass on, as soon I will, or may, my last will and testament, my entire estate, will come to you as the sole beneficiary. Everything will be yours at a time when I, of course, have no need of it any longer." The artist, stumbling for words, "And what about your family?" "My boy, I have long since outlived them all, and as you know, I was childless. All my time and energy went into fathering everything you see here." The artist was like, "Wow, I don't know what to say. This is an amazing proposal. Just the idea that you haven't got the money to buy my works is surprising in itself. Oh, not really, said the collector. You see, freeing up the money also enables me to acquire the works of other artists. Some of them, in fact, I know are your competition. Some are even bitter enemies. Why then, the artist? Why then purchase their work? I can produce all you need. And the collector, oh, well, for now, if we're going to be selfish, let's be intelligent about it. By acquiring their works now, these will all become yours later. In all posterity to come, you alone will be their owner, their master, and their collector. Without need of money, you can dump all these works in the market at a time and for the amount of your own choosing. And if you set those prices low enough, you will vanquish your competition. A double victory for you. Finally, the idea dawns on him, the entire scope of the ambitious and evil plan. The artist speaks. I am speechless. It is both saintly and diabolical. Ha ha, said the collector. That is it exactly. And now one more turn. And this is an extra guarantee that we can protect our investment mutually. Yours as artist and mine as collector, long into the future. Yes, yes, how? Asked the artist. You see this piece of paper? You won't need to read it, and you're not going to remember this in the years to come. What is it? This is what is known as a writ. It is an instruction for the executor of my state to carry out. It states that for years to come, he must monitor the price and the profile of all artists at your level of recognition. And if my executor finds any artist capable of meeting you in name or in fame or in market value, he will then approach that artist. My executor will order from him a single commission. This order in the future will be for a grand work capable of mirroring, of reflecting my own physical condition at that future time. But at that time, said the artist, you would be dead, no? Precisely, said the collector. And in this great work to be built, I want the entire world to know that I am here. From beyond the grave, I will be calling out to all collectors and artists, telling them, reassuring them, and maybe even mocking them, with a declaration that they cannot top what I've done, because it will be a work of art commissioned by an already dead collector. How can anyone compete against me then? Utterly impossible, said the artist. Exactly, and this work, which will reflect my condition, must arrive at its own completion in the same way as I went to mine. The body, my friend, is fleeting, and my instructions clearly state that I am to be cremated. Therefore, this commissioned piece must also show absolutely all of the artist's works in a total state of immolation. In other words, they must go through fire, just as I will have done. Now, with me laying in ashes, that artist's work also becomes ashes. Also, when I tell you the title for this beautiful inspiration, you're going to see how I'll be thumbing my own ashen nose at everyone who defied me and who dared to go against you. This final piece will be titled, Beat This. And after all this, once destroyed, all of the artist's work, even his future work, will as a last touch become your property. Beat that! Seeing the complete masterful plan, the unlimited plot, the checkmate at hand, the artist, while then young and unable to see the future, can only say the three words, I am overcome. Perhaps just a little hunger, said the collector. I've had you here all morning without a meal. Now then, let's have our sandwiches. This one is yours. Oh, my word, it looks a little bit burnt. So there we are, one artist outwitting another, himself being outwitted by the first, who did so unwittingly. That cafe phone call, by the way, it was from the executor of the estate, with news that the collector had died just a few nights earlier, thus allowing him to call and make the proposal. That other artist, he made his gallery announcement after he received that phone call and the commission to destroy his artworks just before running into our friend here, the competitor. So that his challenge, his duel, was not an honest one. He knew he was about to sell that work, even if it looked like he was destroying it, which of course he was. Neither was it wise to bet on that destruction, since without realizing it, he had allowed a dead man to fool him into destroying all his own work, which in any case was now owned by his own rival. My friends, in art, sweet victories and great works often have come about because of irony, fakery, and false pretense. The pretentiousness, however, I assure you, is all real. This is Francisco Ricardo, hoping I didn't give you too much to bite into. Until next time. I'll have the sandwich, please.